Zelda out of nowhere. A Link to the Past. What a game. Hola community, welcome to another episode of Blender Today, live streaming from the Blender Animation Studio Foundation Institute Network Cloud from Amsterdam. How are you doing? How is your week starting so far? We have a collection of features this week. We don't have a lot because, well, if we say lots, we have 3.4 beta and we have 3.5 alpha. So if you count that as a lot, it's actually quite some. Other than that, in terms of features, there's not so much to talk about this week. So I think today we're gonna have a chill evening. It's already dark here, so you know, and I'm having some mate, some drinks. So I would suggest you do the same. Grab some tea, some not coffee. It's a bit late. Depends on where you're watching this. I have a few announcements to do, but today is gonna be chill. Don't expect life-changing features unless your life depends on a bit of performance, geometry nodes, like 2 inputs in one node, and the biggest feature, which is the title of this show, I'm gonna show in a bit. Okay, let's get going. So the announcements of the week is that if you went to builder.blender.org, you might have noticed that there is a new little guy over here, Blender 3.5 Alpha. That was supposed to happen before the Blender conference, but with the conference and so much going on, it wasn't great to have even something else, which is the beta, going on at the same time. Beta for 3.4. So that was moved to last week on Wednesday. That's when the switch happened. There was no splash screen for the first time in the last few releases. That was the team in charge of the splash screen, which is the Blender Studio team, because the release of 3.4 will kind of be close to the release of the film of the studio, the Project Heist film, or Charge. I think the name was announced during the conference, I think. And yeah, so the studio being a big part of the testing for the release of 3.4, especially on Eevee, it deserves the splash screen. So let's see. What else? Alpha. There's not much here. And beta. There's the stable 293, and there is the release candidate for 3.3.2, the LTS release. So yeah, a lot going on. I'm not gonna get too much, or maybe I can. Today we don't have much to talk about. So what if, just questioning, it's just a question now here. So do you think 4 releases every year, it's a lot? Or it's not enough? Should we have more? Or should we actually cut down maybe 3 releases a year? Maybe 2 really. I think 2 is not enough. I think 3 releases would be a magic number, because it feels sometimes that a release just ends and then another one starts immediately. Especially when you're working on the release notes page. I had that feeling in the past. And now I kind of have that feeling too. Like I have to start working on the release notes of 3.4 now, like this week, because the release is next month. Then I happen to be on holidays for the end, for Christmas and stuff. When I get back from my Christmas holidays, 2-3 weeks later, there is the beta of 3.5 and the alpha of 3.6, which means again has to start working on the release notes for the 3.6 release, which I don't even know what's gonna be in there. I think it's what do you think? Do you feel this a bit too much? Some people say they're overwhelmed by the amount of releases, and the releases actually add a lot of overhead to developers, right? So what if there was more room for like doing code quality days? Remember, I don't know if you've been around for long enough, but there used to be something that was called code quality days, which kind of it's a day where developers can, a day every month or so, I think, where developers can focus on code cleanup. No, nothing else, but cleaning the code, making it more readable, more having comments here and there, shuffling things around so it's easier to navigate, and also more welcoming to new developers. So I wonder. I'm just questioning. So how many releases per year? I'm gonna make a little poll here to see what do you think. Again, this is nothing official, but don't take anything official from me. I'm just asking the community because today we don't have many features to talk about, so I want to take the time to engage with the Blender community. Okay, in terms of we have some Blender community news as well, but another thing that was just published today, which is related to the Blender Studio and the Blender here, the World Collide. It's a project by Blender Studio, which is the Blender Conference 2022 identity. If you been around the Blender world lately, you know that the theme for the last conference was these like succulents, these plants ever growing that, well, the discussion behind it had many layers, like about the 20 years of the Blender conference. And we don't usually share these kind of things. Like where does the design for the project starts and why succulents? Well, it all started with a design that we came up with some ideas with Francesco brainstorming about the 20 years, the identity, the tree. So yeah, you should check it out if you want to read a bit more about the design. The links, this link is not in the description, so I can share it with you now, or you can go to studio.blender.org and find the blog post there. It goes really into detail. So thank you, Bo, for working on this, gathering information. Okay, so nearly 100 votes. Most people say that 3 releases would be better than 4 releases. That's good to hear. I think if you as users are okay with that, and developers, I think, would be more than okay with that. Maybe something to consider for next year. You know, also have a bit more free time for working on other things, some bigger projects, larger projects. Because I also have another little announcement to make regarding a feature that was expected for 3.4, like by me. I was expecting it, and it's not gonna make it to 3.4. More on that later. Sad noises coming. Okay, Blender community updates. I know Blender community, I mentioned that it's not like an official blender.org project. It's an independent project, but happens to be made by 2 people working at Blender, which is Francesco and I. You may notice, maybe you don't, because most people go to right-click select, like 99% people go directly to right-click select. But there was 2 sections, one for jobs and one for the events board, and we were getting so much spam. People were not really using the jobs board, so we removed it. And we encourage you, if you want to add job postings to Blender about Blender. I think if you want to focus mainly the Blender community, the Blender artists forums have a jobs board which you can check. But also I think it's at this point, with the reach that Blender has, it's probably just better to go into more like design oriented jobs boards. So to stay away from the Blender, not stay away, but to break out of the Blender bubble a little bit. So yeah, I would recommend just either going to Blender artists or posts in other places, like ArtStation has a jobs board, or CG Society, or you know where to find it. So there are also more changes coming that we are planning with Francesco regarding the Blender community. We're gonna make a blog post. These are changes for next year, so nothing to worry about now. But long story short, we are thinking about focusing mainly on right-click select and the other communities such as graphical, which is not really used that much. Another like Blender.Today is just like a list of YouTube videos to maybe give it another home or discuss about it. All right, we have 69%. People want 3.3 releases. Nice. 68. You broke it. Okay. Next. That's all I have to say about the topic. What topic? The topic of the day. Okay. We're not gonna go to the topic of the day. Let's talk a bit about cycles. There is a bunch of performance changes this week. One of them is related to cycles and related to Apple Silicon users. So if you're using an Apple computer that it has either an M1 or M2 chip, you're gonna see for the M1s, you're gonna see around 5 to 10% improvement in render speeds on cycles. Super nice. For M2 devices, there will be more. You can actually expect the similar improvements on M2 devices with upcoming OS changes, says Michael from Apple, which is interesting. So if you have an M2 and an Apple M2, which at the moment is a MacBook Air 2022 and a MacBook Pro 13-inch 2022, that one with the touchpad, I think, or an iPad, but maybe not yet. The keep your operating system up to date, because apparently you're gonna get some Blender cycle speed up if you keep your operating system up to date. Isn't that crazy times we live in? Okay, speaking of performance, but in a different area. So let's switch topics to performance. In performance, we have a remeshing in sculpt mode. It's now much faster. How much faster? Well, Eric mentions here that in remeshing, in this example, remeshing a 3.4 million polygon mesh went from around 20 seconds to now around 9 seconds. So that's more than twice as fast. So nice. That's super cool. So this example is remeshing a 3.4 million polygon mesh in sculpt mode. Hey, hello Anna, nice to see you. We have a new moderator in the room, so keep your watch your emojis. No, kidding. Thanks Hannah for dropping by. Okay, it's related to performance, but not to mesh in this case. It's related to the real-time compositor. The real-time compositor now should feel more responsive while adjusting the compositor, and also should use less memory. Why? Because there is a new concept that adds some sort of caching. So it calculates once everything that you need, and then it saves that somewhere, and then it remembers the values, and then when you change things, it only updates what it's needed. So it is hard to give it a number, how much faster is it going to be, but it should be generally more responsive. See, because when you change some nodes, it's not going to update the entire planet, but only a part of it. Cool. So real-time compositor, since we're talking about it, I mentioned many times here, or I was assuming, if you watch the live stream, I was always assuming that the compositor would be on 3.4, and I was I made a mistake, because it always been experimental. It was in the experimental section. So experimental settings are only available in alpha stage of Blender. So the moment Blender became beta, 3.4 beta, anything that was experimental, it doesn't show up. It's disabled by default. That's a policy that Blender introduced a few a year ago or so, not too long ago. So that means that 3.4 didn't have the compositor, and people were reaching out to me and say like, hey, what's going on? And I checked with the developers, and indeed there are a number of nodes that don't work. They're not fully supported yet by the viewport compositor, and this is not displayed anywhere on the UI. We're going to work on that. We already made some mockups with Dalai, so maybe when you turn on the compositor in this popover in the shading settings, you're gonna see the nodes. Like if you have a node type, I don't know, image or mask, you know, with scale, like there is a few nodes that are giving a bit of issues here and there because of the nature of the canvas that you are working on when you have a viewport compositor as opposed to just a image. So yeah, we plan to give some kind of warning when you enable that you can expect some things to not work. Also, passes. The compositor, you can enable passes for color, diffuse, volume, specular, and so on. The viewport compositor does not support that yet. So again, would be unpredictable to ship Blender 3.4 with those things missing, unless we have some kind of UI for it. But Beacon 3, it's already started last week. It's a bit late to make these UI changes and to introduce a half working compositor, unfortunately. So yeah, there will be a bunch of people that were expecting for this feature, but most people, I guess, they're using the alpha anyway. So this will be available for 3.5 alpha, and the goal is to remove the compositor from the experimental settings as soon as possible and make it available in 3.5, hopefully, but time will tell. Other than that, more performance improvements. The OBJ exporter now has a little less work to do when exporting, because it's not gonna recalculate the edges because it was doing too much work apparently. By removing this check in the test of exporting a 4 million face grid, instead of taking 4 seconds, now it takes 2.5 seconds. So that's pretty neat for a 4 million face grid export. People ask, EV next in 3.5? No, that's something that I can already, I think, that I mentioned at the beginning of the show that 3.5 is gonna enter beta in February 1st, like at the beginning of February. That's crazy. It feels like tomorrow, because November is November, and December is like it just goes on so fast. So no, EV next is not gonna be ready for that earlier. Sorry, I need some warm drinks. I'm having mate, by the way, for people that don't know. This device is not any kind of drugs, just like tea, but a lot of it. And instead of having 1 cup of tea, you have a 1 liter of something warm. We drink that in South America a lot. It's catching up in Europe too. It's kind of hip in some places. Okay, time to move to user interface. There is a few changes, and even the topic of this show is related to that. Okay, the first one is mainly aesthetic. I mentioned it. It's something I've been using I've been using Blender lately. Yeah. Well, what would you think? I've been using Blender on my own stuff. I ran into a menu called Weight Locks, and it was an eyesore. Look at that. It was locks, and then he had a bunch of icons. The grouping was like per section, so lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. So I restructured it following the guidelines that we wrote, and nowhere. There was no guidelines before. We just knew that things like this should be avoided, and we should have something more like this, which is group all similar operators together, and then add a separator. So I grouped all the lock in one place, all the unlock in another place, and then add an icon only to the first item of each group. So when you see them together, you see the difference. So if you see something like this messy, please poke me, because I'm gonna go with a fork, lift, and update it. So yeah. Also, don't look at the time I pushed this. 2:20 a.m. on Friday. Party hard. Okay. Friday morning. Who wants to go out on a Friday, right? Cool. The next changes that are related to the UI. It's okay. You're gonna get where I'm going. Related to the title of this show is that one. Blender can now support refreshing menu pop-ups. So when you have a menu, Blender wouldn't refresh it. It's like that's a menu and you're stuck with it. So now Blender internally can refresh. Really, what does it mean that it can refresh? Well, so for example, if you add an asset in the asset library, the menu can refresh. And you would say, why would you refresh it? Well, because node group assets will show up in the add menu, and this deserves some cheering. This is a major change. Why is it so exciting? Well, because Blender now, and I hope this doesn't crash, because literally it was before I was starting the live stream, it crashed on me. I'm using alpha so far, people. But hey, so this only works for geometry nodes so far. But look at this. This is a new blend file. It's a default queue. I go to geometry nodes and then I do Shift A, and then it's like, oh wait, I have a section down here. Hair tools, density, random. What is this? Well, let me show you. For example, well, actually, maybe I can add some curve here, and then I'm gonna sculpt. And if this crashes, I deserve it because I shouldn't be doing demos in live. But hey, so for example, I can do Shift A, and then I have hair tools, density, and random. What is this? Well, this happens to be part of my asset library. So if I go to the asset browser, you're gonna see what I mean. So remember to go to the asset browser, do Shift F1 twice, and then you're gonna toggle between the file browser and your asset library. So yeah, in my user library, one of the many libraries, I think I only have one in my preferences. Yeah, I only have one. But in here, you're gonna find that I have a bunch of assets, like some meshes, I have a mess. I'm not really organized, but you see, I have a catalog called hair tools. Inside, I have a catalog called density and a catalog called random. The hair tools is the main catalog. So now you're gonna find it's like, oh, I actually understand there is some correlation between this, right? In the add menu, the node group assets of type geometry nodes, this is only available for geometry nodes now, but it will be expanded to shader and other systems in the future. But you can see that the menus actually come from the catalog's name. And actually random, wait, density is here, random is here, and hair tool is here. Oh, I missed one, I think. Like one node group. Random, delete, hair noise. Hair noise is nowhere. So if I add it, only assets in this current file can be, yes. I need to go to my file, which actually I can just go. Today we have time. Let's do it live. Blender assets. Why do I don't see the hair tools here? Okay, maybe let's not go. Blender, document Blender assets. I should see my hair tools files here. I put it in this folder. Okay, so let's try it live. I'm gonna open Blender. No, wait, I don't need to open Blender because there is an operator for that. Right click, open blend file, bam. So what I want to do is I want this hair nose to be in the hair tools catalog. So it will show up in my hair tools. It should show up here in the top level. So let's see if I can do it. I can take the hair nose, put it in the hair tools. So now in hair tools, I have this density random. Cool. It's a bit confusing because catalogs show everything inside of at this level. But anyway, let me save this, save the blend file, close it, and then let's see if it magically refreshed. Hair tools. Wait, let's refresh it. Maybe this needs... Okay, let's open a new Blender file. Maybe it needs to recache it. And geometry nodes, new hair tools. Yes, yeah, it needs to be to recache it. So that is the only thing. Hair nose, density, and random. So it works technically, but the refreshing doesn't seem to refresh this. Although maybe I'm using the experimental asset indexing, maybe that has to do. It's gonna be reported to the module, respective module. So yeah, it's not bugged. It's not bugged. It's alpha, beta actually, because it is in beta. So you know what? Do you see the excitement in this? It means that Blender, in theory, could ship with groups of nodes that make your life easier without actually having to you add yourself like 30 nodes to do something as simple as hair nose. So that is pretty exciting to me because it means, you see, this is a node group and it doesn't show you the node group name. That is interesting because assets don't have that field by default. You can still see them in the properties. You can change it if you want, like to rename the node group and stuff, but assets usually don't have that. Just to remove some of the noise. But this is pretty exciting. I'm pretty really looking forward to what this can open in the future. I really hope that Blender 3.4 would ship with some of the node groups, but I think it's gonna be 3.5. The idea is that Blender will ship with simple like setups that you reuse all the time, and it should be well thought out. It was gonna be made probably by Simon here, and also if you're in the community, well, if you're watching this, you are. I added you to the community by just watching this. The idea is to get as many, like the idea for geometry nodes was to get as many building blocks as possible, but now that we have all these building blocks, we should make groups of nodes that could be used for all kinds of stuff, and Blender could ship with them because they don't really use that much space. They're just text, right? Okay. Oh, the voting keeps shifting. Now it's 59%. Interesting. That is a lot less encouraging. So the people that get wants the 4 releases every year, what's your reasoning? Leave your comment somewhere. And do you volunteer to help with those releases? Maybe the question should have been like, do you volunteer to help with 4 releases a year instead of 3? Okay, next change. Let's talk about geometry nodes, since we're talking about geometry nodes anyway. Oh yeah, one requirement I forgot to mention. This is a commit by Hans. Thanks, Hans, for making this feature. One requirement for this to work is that your file, your assets needs to be saved again. You need to open those files and save them again with 3.4 or later. If you have done this already for the search menu integration, that's fine. but otherwise you need to resave them. Just open the file, save. This will add some magic inside of your assets, that some metadata probably, that will make it work with the new system. Okay, geometry nodes. There is one commit by Hans again that makes it that adds 2 inputs to the sample curve node. The inputs are index and value. We can see a better description here. And this is how it looks. So curve index and value. There are 2 tasks related to this. This batch adds 2 features to the sample curve node. First is an index input to allow choosing the curve to sample for each point. Now you can specify each curve or each spline. No, each curve, because it gets curves. Interesting. Second is a custom field input, which is evaluated on the control points of the curve and then sampled like the other outputs. Then there is an all curves option. Is this the same task? Yeah, it is. It's mentioning more inputs than the commit log. Oh, that for the all behavior, there is an all curves option which takes the length of all curves into account instead of just the index of the one that you specify. There has been discussions about splitting the node up more, but this is an intuitive combination of options and will work well enough for current cases. Yeah, there is with geometry nodes and when node setups in general, there is always the trade-off. Either do we make super basic, simple, single use case nodes, or we make more generic nodes. And the node group assets, I think, are going to help with building those node groups that Blender could ship with without having to to add too much functionality to one node. Okay, the next change is the copy attributes add-on. It's 2022 and Blender still needs an add-on to copy paste the simplest things. Yeah, I'm also not really happy about it, but I'm happy that people like Aaron are actually going after and cleaning it up and updating it. How outdated it was? Well, just to give you an idea, it still had some Blender game engine features. It still mentioned duplis instead of instance, which is a change we did in 2.80. It's still called groups to what we call nowadays collections. So yeah, it was quite outdated. So thank you, Aaron, for updating this little add-on, which I wish we didn't need, but we still need. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the add-on section in Blender, search for copy, and it's called copy attributes menu, which now it's attributes has a different meaning in Blender. So maybe then even the name of the add-on has to change. But yeah, if you do enable this add-on when you have Control C, when you hit Control C, you're gonna find all these settings. Actually, some of this, there are already similar functionality somewhere in other places. Like if you have 2 objects and you do like Control C, there is a copy modifiers, but in Blender we have the Control L copy modifiers option, which copies everything. Although the copy modifiers in the add-on allows you to copy selected modifiers. It gives you a list of all the modifiers. So there is functionality that is still useful in this add-on that should either be ported to C, but yeah. Okay, time to move on. The 3.3 LTS still gets updates. This is not released yet. It's part of the release candidate, but if you work in a studio and are using Blender 3.3 LTS, this might be interesting for you because many libraries that this release uses have been updated. There's just minor updates. Like Python has been updated to the latest 3.10 release, which is 3.10.8 instead of 2. FFmpeg went from 5.0 to 5.1. XPath, the XML library, went from 2.4 to 4.9, and SQLite We have SQLite in Blender. SQLite? Really? Wow, that's interesting. Lots of things can be done with that. Anyway, these are the libraries that have been updated. Hopefully, OpenImage.io. This might be interesting for you, like 2.3.13 to 2.3.20. Other than that, there is not much to say for this week updates. So I'm gonna slowly jump in the Blender.Today community to see if there is any question. There's 8 comments. So let's see what people are asking. In the meantime, I think it's safe to say 60 and 40%. I'm gonna close the poll for now, but 60%, nearly 60% of people. I think we broke YouTube because I stopped the poll and now it says 59% is 3. They want 3 releases per year, but 40% want 4 releases per year. So there is 1% that is somewhere in the ether. It got lost in the limbo. So yeah, interesting. Okay. Let's see. Let's update the page again, just so we get the latest and greatest. One more comment. So, okay, let's start. 46 seconds ago, Nub has asked and made the thread. Thank you. Oi, Pablo. On the subject of release timing, 3 a year would be best. I tutor a few people and they usually find the updates too minimal to follow, but too frequent to bother with. Too minimal to follow, as in, I mean, there is big updates. Come on. But like the last release had the hair grooming stuff. The previous release had light groups and shadow caustics. The previous release had, I don't know. I think we do have big features, but for example, the hair release in 3.3, it's big in one way, but also for a beginners, it's not really the best. I wouldn't teach a beginner to use the new system for geometry nodes hair grooming tools because it's just, unless they are doing a geometry nodes course, it might be a bit much to handle. So, okay, so 3 releases a year feels better. Maybe even 2.5 a year, because people who like keeping up with it use daily or alpha builds anyway. I think 3 releases a year is a good number. By the way, this is what I say. This is not part of his comment. I think it's biased here because the people here already get new releases a bunch. Yeah, right? I heard there were some updates on physics nodes. I'm curious if there are any plans of information how it will work now that we're removing simulations dependence on frame time. Is that still a plan? Yes. Getting some early ground rules in place for such nodes on math would be needed to implement would be good for public development. Yep. The geometry nodes team had a workshop after the Blender conference, so last week. And they are going to do a write-up, I think, at the code blog, because there were some good discussions that coming out of that. Like sometimes you got even a bit philosophical, because with geometry nodes, object types are kind of no longer a thing. An object can be anything, you know. In this day and age, you know, you can be anything. Geometry nodes can be anything. Object types can be anything. You can start as a mesh one day, wake up as a curve, and be a volume or a point cloud any time of the day. So there was also some discussion about how to expose it in the UI, multiple data blocks internally. I don't know. I don't know the outcomes of that, so I'm going to ask the team to write up about it. 3 releases is a good following the beacon phases. Yep, indeed. Okay, let's see the next question by Sophie Cat. Howdy, Pablo. Howdy, Sophie. When do you think something like this will be fixed? Not a serious bug, but it's annoying sometimes. Well, every bug is It's a serious bug and should be seen. So viewport view resets after navigating within the camera view. Navigating within the camera view. And then oh, no, that's a really bad bug. And it hasn't been looked at in 1 year. So Philip can confirm. Not sure this will be classified as a bug. It looks like a bug to me. Maybe it can be, as you can see, it's been nearly 1 year since the last comment in this area. So I think this needs to be revisited. I will copy this and put it on I added on my, I have a separate monitor with like tabs, million tabs that I like to keep open and have a look after. But I will try to ask again about this because it is, to me, it's a bug. Thanks for reporting though. But whenever you see a bug it's like a year old, then maybe, well, first try to see if it still happens in 3.5 in the latest alpha, and then bring it up again. It's okay to relieve a 1-year-old bug when it's actually a bug, especially. Okay. Also, T-Boy says, hey, Pablo, hey, T-Boy, wondering if you have any timelines, target dates for EV Next. There is a task on developer.blender.org about EV Next, and you should find here EV Next, and there is a project, EVM viewport. There is some discussion going on. I can't find the task right now, but there is a task where you can see the progress, like updating libraries, shading, compilation, and what is there and what's not. You should find it in maybe the workboard. No, this is really outdated. But yeah, it should be here. EV features. EV maybe is here next. Grease pencil next. Selection next. Overlay next. That's how they are calling it to each one of the projects. That's sweet. And then here, EV next, shaders assigned to. Okay, so this was made by Jordan. Yeah, so this is how they're calling it. And this is part of this task, selection next. So yeah, work is being done, but there's no timeline or even target dates for now. There has been a lot of reasons for this project to be taking longer. It's the aligning with other modules as well. For example, EV Next might require, or EV in general might require a higher version of OpenGL in the future. Right now, OpenGL minimum version is 3.3, and in the future, I think the idea is to have a minimum requirement of 4.3, and that will, yeah, that requires other modules to also, agree on that. Metal, for example, was a big thing. It was like Apple support was also a big thing that was making this switch harder, but they have tackled all the issues and they are focusing on their Metal implementation of everything. So we don't really have to wait for that anymore. The EV Next project is still, as you can see, is alive and going further. I can't find the task now, but if you go to the EV viewport chat, I think there was somewhere there. Is it in sub projects? It's not a sub project. Somewhere here. But yeah, it's been worked on. I wouldn't say 3.5. I would say more like later. You can try it any day, by the way. If you enable the experimental EV Next and save your preferences and then quit Blender and start again, you're gonna find in here. What is the status of it? Even X is like a whole new engine, right? So it's gonna take a while to put it to get it aligned with what Eevee can do at the moment. I would suggest to test and please report anything that you find. Any updates on light linking, not compositing based, so not light groups? I'm sure you're tired of hearing this question. I am a bit, but also because I really want light linking myself. I completely selfish. Like, I also want it. So yeah, what can I say? I don't know. We can go to the task and keep asking, but I don't know if that's gonna help. Yeah, light linking. You see, like, the amount of love here that it's receiving is like, I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really know what's the showstopper here. Legal issue, completely understand. What is the legal issue? Requested to wait, what? Oh, legal harassment of the what? Did I miss anything? Huh. Okay. I think I missed some of this discussion going on, but yeah. I'm also waiting for it. Any target date? Is it being discussed in a serious manner, such as development, target, release, implementation plans? Or is it all still undecided and not really going anywhere? I know that the Cycles team know how badly wanted this feature is. If it's not there yet, it's probably because the patch is not ready. I mean, why would you add light groups? The light groups and light linking, I think the patch was even made by the same developer, so why giving one more priority than the other? Okay. Free Mind says, and I think this will be all the questions, and well, I think I can reply all of them. Yeah. Hey there. Hey Free Mind. The two things that caught my eye from the Blender conference is the new principal shader, which is by the same developer that is working on light linking, so what is going on? Can we expect these features to land in Blender 3.5? Again, principal shader developed by Lucas Stockner, and the new bevel, none of them are working for Blender full time. Let me check so again, can't really say. I haven't watched the new, let's see, it is, but is it full time? I'm gonna ask the team and get back to you, because so many questions. I should bring Sergey here next time and just asking in person, because probably he knows as much. The new bevel again is being developed by Howard, and Howard is it's not working full time for Blender. He's fully committed. He made the previous bevel, and he made so many more features in mesh editing in the past, so he's fully committed to it, but I don't think he can work full time on it. Personal Hannah says, is there a plan for a node? Hi, Personal Hannah. Is there a plan for a node-based outliner once all the major geometry nodes are made? Node-based outliner. Well, discussions were going about collection nodes, so relationship between objects on a collection level. So I guess that would be the outliner kind of replacement, but outliner is more than that. Node-based outliners, or you mean like the old OOPS editor in Blender? Glenn, hi Pablo, hope all is going well. Can the mesh snap utilities line tool get a bit more love and be moved to object mode at mesh line? Just now we have to install an add-on just to draw a mesh line. but this comes with Blender, right? It's not, you don't have to install it. It's like line. Yeah, snap utility line. You don't have to install it. It comes with Blender. It's like the node wrangler. So many people don't know that Blender has a mesh line tools, and it's super useful. When I first started using Blender, I was told by most people there just wasn't a line tool, and was told I had to extend points just to draw lines. It's basically a polyline tool and can make heaps of unusual shapes as well. I'm not familiar with it, but you should, I mean, is it really, why is it an add-on in the first place? Is it even developed by a developer that is working for Blender? So we can ask Germano why this couldn't be in Blender. Is it, I mean, actually it has settings, key map changes, using the K tool, which the K tool is for knife, right? So maybe this is the reason why it's an add-on, because it's actually changing. I know, while you have the mesh line tool enabled, then I don't know, I need to ask Germano, because it also adding a bunch of theme settings, which I don't know if we want in Blender. But yeah. Next question by Flo. Question: is there any info on when we might see support for custom vec2 arrays attributes in Alembic? That's a very specific question. I'm not sure who's working on that at the moment. Last time that was looked into, I think, was Cibran. Maybe Ares is gonna look into Alembic at some point. He's been working on OBJ, and I think he wanted to work on in the future on other importer exporters too, but I don't know if Alembic was in that. We're looking for this to store custom UVs generated in Maya. I think it's better if you ask in the Blender chat in the pipeline IO module. If you go to developer.blender.org in pipeline assets and IO, there is a link to the chat here, pipeline assets IO module. This is where the developers hang out of this module. So please ask there. Remember that chat is only for like module for developers working in the module. So it's not for like a tutorial on how to do this and that, but it's a valid question to know if this is in the horizon, or maybe something that you or someone from your team can help to add, to contribute even more to what you contribute with Sprite Fright, Gold Development Fund supporter, CodeQuest supporter, and Blender Studio supporter. Big fan. Thank you, Flo. The last two questions. Hi, Pablo. I'm so glad about the conference, says Drew. I was wondering why I'm not able to use the copy all selected feature when right-click on a set of XYZ. It's always grayed out. Am I missing something? Thank you so much. If that's not available, it's either because it's not accessible via the Python API, although if it's showing the copy all selected, it should. You sure you have many objects with a similar functionality selected? But yeah, not sure why. Next question by Dan. Where do we ask questions for the live stream? You're in the right place. I'd like to hear an update on texturing. No updates yet related to texturing, other than the performance is being looked at by Jorun. He already made it so much faster to paint and in 3D compared to the previous release, to 3.3. So actually that's one of the big changes in, if you go to the wiki, you go to release notes 3.4 sculpt paint texture, you have in texturing, no, this is for performance and memory use has been improved when using facets, hiding and masks aren't used. Or is still in the experimental? Maybe it's still experimental. I need to ask, because today I talked with Jeroen and he mentioned performance improvements. Or maybe they are not highlighted here yet. Maybe. These nodes are updated by hand, people. So if you don't see any feature that you know exists but it's not here, please poke the respective developers, such as, well, if you know their developers or their modules, please get in touch. Other than that, I'm gonna have a quick look at the chat. Did I miss anything? Hannah says, what I mean is related to the node outliner, node-based outliner. What I mean is to manage your object parents and children inside of a node editor. Same like with collections. Yeah, well, that is collection nodes. The topic was brought up a few times. Maybe it has to do, is related to simulation nodes, because if you want to tweak relationships between different objects, maybe there are still design questions around that. So I wouldn't rule it out completely, but I wouldn't count on it also in the short term, because in the future the team wants to focus on simulation nodes. Have you tried Intel Arc GPUs? I have at SIGGRAPH this year. Can you please reload the website? I don't think I'm gonna be able to answer more questions because we're already 1 hour of live stream and try to limit it at this. However, feel free to tune in next week. Next week is next week is going to be 14th, nice number, of November, which is the second to last episode of the year of Blender.Today. So there will be some news. 3.5 is gonna have a few more features. 3.4 should be getting close to release. Well, it's Beacon 3 now, so it's only bug fixes and improvements. Well, mainly bug fixes. So maybe we're not gonna see that many questions. That many features. I should, though, get a real answer about the cycles questions you were asking today. I should. Other than that, I think I'm gonna call it a day. Thank you all for tuning in for today. I hope you like what you see. I hope you understand some of the topics that I mentioned before related the real-time compositor. It's gonna be in master. If you watch this show, you probably use master anyway, so nothing changes for you. I've been using the real-time compositor on my personal projects for the last 2 weeks. I even modeled using the compositor live in the viewport, which is not something I should probably be doing, but hey, if I can, I will. So report any issues that you might find. If you can, please use the beta release of 3.4, because the more bugs we find in the beta, remember, the less bugs we are going to encounter in the stable release, which means developers can focus on the next version of Blender and everybody's happy, such as I hope you will be for the rest of the week until we meet again in the next week. Other than that, have a fantastic time using the features that we just mentioned. Happy blending. Watch out your ear holes, because in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ouch. Thanks everyone. Have a great week. See you next time. Same place, same time for another Blender Today live.